find your grounding in the communities that give you that warmth and purpose and empowerment at this time?
When you are at the C-level, half of the decisions you make every day are wrong. But you need to be okay because the other half are right, and you just hope that that half that you got right is the important half.
Empowerment should go beyond just encouragement. It's also about access, visibility, and of course, eliminating the systemic barriers that kept women from participating fully for way too long, honestly.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another The Future of Work panel by cakedotcom. My name is Malina Selic, and today we will be discussing a very important topic for all of us, which is women in tech. We will be taking a deep dive into this subject, and we will be reflecting on the current state of women in tech, the challenges that women face in scaling their career growth, and also what we can look forward to in the rest of 2025. Today, I have three very special guests with me. With us today is Anna Radulovski, the founder and global CEO of WomenTech Network. Then we have Sabina Ciofu, an associate director at techUK. And last, but certainly not the least, is Zoja Kukic Djordjevic, co-founder of XLSIOR. So I think we can start in that order. Anna, Sabina, and then Zoja. The podium is yours.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for inviting me and for having me. So as you mentioned, I'm the founder and global CEO of WomenTech Network, one of the largest communities organization for women in technology. Apart from that, I'm also an author of the Chief in Tech book.
Yes.
Which is a blueprint for women who are navigating their journey in tech, because there are tons of different invisible barriers out there. There is no kind of guide who would take you from when you start your career to actually reaching the C-suite. And when you look at the numbers are extremely low when it comes to C-suite executives. So as part of my journey, I also been on boards of Coding Girls, also created Executive Women in Tech, and I'm a director at Founding Institute. It's one of the largest pre-seed accelerators in the world. And I'm passionate about sharing actionable insights, inspire change, and elevating the next generation of leaders.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, and thanks for having me as well. Lovely to hear the story of Anna, and looking forward to the conversation and learning from all of you. So I am Sabina. I lead in the international work at techUK. techUK is a trade association of the UK technology sector, representing about 1,100 companies and all their employees. We have done a lot of work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as skills, which is the number one problem of all the tech sectors in the world. Whenever I do speak to tech companies, it comes up as an absolute priority and number one issue and challenge in developing and growing their companies. I have done a lot of different things around women empowerment, also a massive passion of mine throughout the years working in the technology sector and in politics more broadly. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Now me. So it was great. I'm already very excited about talking with Sabina and Anna and with you, of course. And a brief introduction from me. So I'm based in Belgrade, and most of my active career I spent in the startup ecosystem. I grew a startup network of startup hubs. Then we were building a pre-acceleration program that was the first one in Europe that became part of the Google for Startups. Then I moved a little bit more into the private sector, working as a consultant and advisor, also mainly working with startups and a little bit with large companies looking for ways how to work with startups. Let's put it that way. And and now I'm co-founder of XLSIOR. So we are working on the go-to-market. We are specialized in helping startups address their go-to-market. We are working mostly with early stage and seed startups. So when I would say when the challenges are, you either make it or break it. No time for mistakes. And women in tech is something that I'm passionate for quite a long time, almost all my career. In that sense, I have like a small passion project, which is making tech kits for girls, through which girls from 6 to 11 years old are learning basics of technology and electronics, but doing stuff they really like creating, for example, now it's Easter cards, which are, having light, and they're adding a lot of stickers and glitter and everything, drawing and crafting, and in the meantime learning about how to make an electric circuit, which is, I'm sure we'll address it, but I think if we talk about women in tech, we need to go back and fix the issue of entry and why women are not enrolling into the tech roles and tech universities.
Thank you, Zoja. I also want to mention, looking into all of your work and bios, it's wonderful to see like the overlaps that you all have, and like the different kinds of support groups and networks that you have either co-founded or you're individually participating in, and it's just wonderful to see. So yeah, let's dive into the topics, if you don't mind. We'll start with the let's say the progress in women career development, which despite the progress, obviously, in tech companies in the last couple of years, especially after COVID-19, numbers still show that women are underrepresented in the tech industry. And that's also a regular thing, not just in small and medium companies, tech companies, but also in the big ones, right? The GAFAM, Google, Apple, well, Meta now, Amazon, Microsoft workforce, where on average only 31% of their employees are female. So the question would be for all three of you, but we'll start with Sabina. What do you think about the current state of women in tech?
Thanks so much for that question. And I would maybe start with a point Zoja made me think of. So before I dive into your question, if that's okay, and that's about kind of getting young women in tech. I fully agree with that. And the demands of the market right now are very, very significant in that space. We do need more girls in STEM. We do need more women in tech to kind of pick up these careers that we'll be talking about in a minute. What I would also make as a point of caution there is that we don't only need tech as a background for increasing the size of, or the slice of women and men in these technology roles. We need all kinds of backgrounds. We need more of the, lawyers, more of the philosophers, more of the literature grads, more of the, I think people who have studies, or more of the psychologists, people who have studied all kinds of different things to choose a career in tech. It's that diversity of background as well that I think is maybe not often talked about, and I find it so important. It's also, I'm not sure we would love living in a society that's fully made of computer scientists. Might be a bit boring. So I think kind of that diversity of background and initiative and education, and it's just so important to get this whole tech right and the future of it right. So just a point that Zoja kind of made me think about as she was talking about her wonderful project. About
step in. Sorry, just
sure.
I agree fully and 100% with you. The reason why I mentioned this is exactly what you're saying. It's not like, and this is always what we say, we don't want every girl now to think that she should be a programmer or involved in tech. But we do need, and this is also what data says, it's just less visible for us in tech, that we need girls who will become women, who will be comfortable with learning new things about technology, which is now, we are lagging in that sense. And there's numerous research which are saying that women are losing due to this digital transformation, because we as women are have this bias that technology is not for us, the society is just putting us in those boxes. And then when we need to move, let's think about 30 years ago, architect moving from drawing on a paper to drawing on the software, men were the first ones who started doing it. And this is the gap I don't want to see in the future, so just, but I agree completely. And thank you for clearing it up, because we might not have the time to do it later.
Thanks, Zoya. And sorry, just to bring the conversation back on track to the question that I was asked. So look, the current state of women in tech, it's bad. I don't know how else to kind of frame it. It's pretty bad. It's, unfortunately, I think since the beginning of the year, getting worse. You've mentioned 31%, I think, on the big tech companies. I think I had the number of 28% of the global workforce, tech workforce being made up of women. I think the World Economic Forum put it to something like 2,158 or something like that, very far away. At the current pace for achieving gender parity, you do have the whole discourse from the other side of the Atlantic. I'm sure Anna can speak more about it, and this whole disheartening discourse in politics against DI. It's just not a great state of affairs, and we are not in a good place. That said, I think what we tend to forget when we speak about the kind of status quo and what we need to do and why we need to accelerate it as opposed to be happy with the small steps towards equality, is that actually this is a huge business market. Like the DEI global market is something like 7 or 7.5 billion US dollars, and that was back in 2020. So it's just a huge business opportunity. We know that diversity is not only good for society, it's not going to be good for women, it's not going to be good for families, and living in kind of more equal societies. It's actually really good for business. So I think although the pace can seem a bit slow, and the political messaging around diversity can seem a bit disheartening. I think kind of going back to the numbers and why this is sensible and good business practice will probably help us keep moving the dial forward and hopefully accelerate it as opposed to just being happy with the small steps.
Thank you, Sabina. I just want to point out, I think because we know the problem, right? But it's good to talk about the stuff that we can do, and this focus on it going good, the diversity being good for business. That's something to keep in mind instead of diversity being good just for the sake of diversity and equality, etc. So I like that shift, and I'd like to kind of put that somewhere in this, to pin it, let's say. Whoever feels called to Anna, you can take over.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts around this.
Mm-hmm.
So during my interviews with C-level executives and technology veterans, board members for the Chief in Tech book, I was asking them one of the questions that I was really passionate about, and I was very curious. And I said, in comparison to a decade ago, what do you think have changed and why the barriers still persist, to leadership? And many of them answered that there is definitely much more awareness. There are much more communities. There's much things that are spoken about, despite the backlash. I mean, one of our community, for example, our community's WomenTech network, we still continue, everything that we do, because I think that it's more than ever important to stay strong and to continue. Of course, we do rely on the support of our partners as well, but our mission continues. We just need to find new ways of communicating, what we're doing. Sometimes the wording can change. For example, instead of DI, I saw that some of the people started to use the term fair. So I think that things are maybe evolving. I think that the way around 2020, the things that we're doing and right now, the things that are happening is completely different, of course, but there is definitely much more awareness. And we are seeing more women in comparison to a decade ago, years back. We are seeing more women in leadership, stepping into leadership roles, where there are more conversations about women in tech, like ours, like so many others. There are lots of different webinars went. For example, actually on 4th April, we had a Women in Tech Day. So it went crazy, and women around the world and allies and different, companies, universities, individuals were celebrating and, embracing this day, what it means to them. And what we are seeing that things are, it's up and down. You need to be constantly, doing something to change the numbers, I feel like. And of course, it's not on just our shoulders as women in tech and allies. There's a lot of things that companies can do. And when you have the right people, in the C-suite and leadership roles, and of course, when they have the right resources, they have power, they have allies, they can move the needle. That progress is not often very, huge sometimes, but what we are observing that things are moving, and I think that it's very easy to get disengaged by all the news that we're seeing out there. But there are things that we can control and there are things we cannot control, and the things that we can control, we need to be thinking how we can do more of that. So I think that this conversation around women in tech is more important than ever. And the barriers still persist. They're, of course, out there, from gender bias to microaggression to a lack of representation in decision-making roles in the C-suite. For example, in the C-suite, there are women still hold only 12.4% of the C-suite roles in STEM and 20% of CTO position in mid-markets. And these are just some of the stats that we have just covered, and my hope that as individuals, as an organization, that we can play our part into moving the needles and making the progress.
Thank you.
I wouldn't add much. I think both perspectives are really good. I would say that I agree with both. First of all, I agree with Sabina, and my answer would also be it's not good. And apart from all of the things she mentioned, I think another thing is also, we are now, it seems like a little bit of a crisis in terms of economic crisis, and every data so far showed that in tech, women are the first ones to go in layoffs. They have higher percentages of laying off women. And then to continue with Anna's point that we should think of what we can control, then I would say that even if a company is thinking about layoffs or something like that, they should introduce this gender lens and understand why are women often the first ones to be on those lists. And also then, on the other hand, I also agree with Anna, the momentum is there and things are happening, and it's not what currently some politicians are saying or doing cannot change immediately the momentum that was created and the initiatives that are behind it, and more importantly, women and men who stand behind these agendas, let's put it this way, like women who are now who understand how to get those higher roles, who are fighting for those opportunities, men who are like their supporters in that area. So I think that cannot change by a press of a button or some rule. On the other hand, I think that there should be a pushback, and that some of the large companies, global tech giants, are making a pushback to this negative DEI talk. And I think it's good to see that, and it's good to keep on talking about it. So I think this panel is even more important than it would be if it was happening like 6 months ago, because we need to still continue talking and not change this environment that we've worked very hard to create.
Thank you, Zoja. Now, I think all of you mentioned the problems with like leadership roles, right? Like higher up, and this kind of takes us into like our next topic, and that's according to the data we collected in a recent study, survey that is, among the main challenges that women in tech face are difficulty with career progression. And I think that this is something, especially Zoja, I know from your talks, it's the numbers are kind of the same. Things haven't changed much, and that's that our study found that, which is interesting to some who haven't heard this before, is that the women in leadership positions face difficulties with career advancement more often than those in non-leadership roles. And when we talk in general, at the beginning of their careers, women in tech tend to face fewer challenges, with over half of women from 0 to 2 years of experience not facing any major challenges in their careers. So the start is more or less okay, and I wouldn't say easy, but not as challenging. However, as years of experience rise, the problem with career advancement rises as well. And so, Zoja, based on your experience so far, I guess you've seen this, but I would actually question would be like, have you seen something that's common? And how would you advise today's women at the beginning of their careers, like how to recognize these, let's call them red flags. So something that could be telling of like, could they advance there like later down the road or not?
So thanks. It's a very complex question, and I'm sure in my answer I'm going to miss some of the aspects. So I look forward to Sabina and Anna adding more details. But first of all, yeah, what we see happening in tech, and I think Anna also mentioned it, it's there's a term for it. It's called leaking pipeline. So we have, for example, let's say around 30% of women going into the tech. And then as we climb, women that percentage is decreasing. So we have around 10% at the leadership C-level roles. But what's interesting, it's also decreasing at every level of seniority as we go up. And what's happening with those women, they are just leaving the tech at all. They're not just staying into some specific like middle management roles. They're actually leaving the industry. So that's one thing, and a lot of research has shown exactly what I saw in your, which is good. At least we know that that's something that we can say that's the fact that junior staff women don't notice any barriers, and there are two reasons for it. I think one of them, there aren't many that are that visible in the beginning. And then, but the biggest change is visible. I think in your research it's around age 45, if I remember. I don't remember the age.
Yes, I think 45 over. Yeah. I believe that's.
But what's actually what I see is the biggest what we've seen, because what I cooperated with UNDP on doing a deep research which was qualitative data. So we said, okay, everyone knows the statistics, but let's hear the stories behind the statistics. What's happening? Why are women leaving the workforce? What's going on there? And what we've seen is one aspect that changes everything. Mostly the biggest change is motherhood. The moment woman becomes a mom, that's the biggest moment when she sees barriers. And some of these barriers are not only related to the employer. They're just societal barriers, let's put it that way. And then on the other hand, part of them, and this is something that we've just started working with tech companies, some of them are the ways that the employer is supporting them. So because there is a dominant male workforce and male leadership, there is a lack of clear knowledge in tech companies, like what is the best way to support women during pregnancy, during in her, let's say, kids bearing age, and while she has smaller kids, and then when she has older kids. And some of these, for example, incentives and support systems are actually making women lack. So, for example, a lot of companies have something that's called, actually, do you want me to go into details now, or do you want me maybe to pause? What would you prefer?
I do know that you like going into details and data. You could. I'm just like wondering. It's like what if we can.
Yeah, I can give some
bit like. So go ahead. I think examples are
Yeah. So example, there is something that often is visible in the tech sector. So once you come from a maternity leave, you get a mentor. So I'm talking about, let's say, European companies mostly, which have a little bit larger maternity leave. You get a mentor, which will help you get back to the business. But what this mentor is actually signaling is that the woman forgot big parts of their job, so she needs a mentor. And not only to that woman who is already insecure because of all the things that the mother could have makes in your brain and in your life. And but the other thing is that it's signaling to the company as well. Then also we see, for example, employers and team managers and managers, for example, assigning lower intensive tasks to the newly moms, let's say it that way. the sign of support. But this leads to those women not taking the roles and the tasks which make you advance in your career, in your jobs. Or for example, not women are less likely to be invited to go to some business trips, again, because the employer wants to support their other role. But what it's actually doing is it's also decreasing some of the, opportunities to them. And those are just some examples which are happening, which not intended, but are out there and are happening and are influencing women in their climb through the company and through the career ladder. And just to go back a little bit, because your question was like, what does somebody who is just entering tech and is not seeing many barriers, the employer and the culture of the employer makes a huge difference. And some of those things can be visible, for example, especially in the tech world. What are team building activities? Not just formal, but informal. Are your teammates mostly going to play, soccer after the game, or going to watch, a soccer game and beer, and that's their way of having fun? That's usually something that more men participate in than women, for example. Or what worked really best among my colleagues and friends, when I did mentorship with women, I always ask, are there women in senior roles? And I've had like one great epiphany from one girl I was actually interviewing for this research that I mentioned. And then she was saying like, the company is doing great. And then I asked her, okay, and tell me, so she was really high up. It was a large company, and she had, it wasn't a C role, but it was like, she was leading a team of more than 100 people. So she had team managers below her. And I said, okay, but so what's your next step here? And she said, well, I assume I will go somewhere. And then I saw her thinking, and she said, oh my God, I just realized that every woman that was ever at my position only left the company. They never went higher. And I think that's a signal which you don't notice unless you ask yourself the question or somebody else asks you the question. But I think it's a good, especially in big companies, it's a good question to ask. Like, were there any women at higher positions? Are there any women at higher positions? And for the employer, I think the really important is to ask, to try and get an honest exit interview from the women who are leaving. That makes a difference for the ones that you want to stay.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, these are huge topics. There's a lot to talk about. Like in here, it's just scratching the surface. But yes, I think these sound like good pointers, at least for a start. Sabina, Anna, like who like wants to kind of pitch in now?
I'd love to jump in just very briefly, because I think Zoja covered a lot of ground there. But just to go back to your kind of root question around young women kind of entering the industry. I think that's a really fascinating point, right? Because for a lot of them, that might be the first job or the first internship, or and I think Zoja's point about work culture is just so important, especially then. Because I think when you are kind of slightly later in your career or more mature, you have a bit more experience, you are able to kind of identify red flags or figure out what works for you, what doesn't. And you also are at the more confident point in your career to be able to call things out or change things in your workplace that you think are toxic or not good. And I would say for that particular point, it is really important to kind of be able to develop that sense for red flags. Because you can think like something really toxic is actually normal, and that's not okay. It's not normal. This is not how workplaces are supposed to be. And if you are the youngest person in the room, you're supposed to be treated with respect, and you're supposed to be treated well. And I think sometimes the effects of a toxic environment when you're really young can be damaging for the rest of your career, be really difficult to kind of come out of those. So I think finding the spotting the initial allies when you kind of join a new workplace, being able to kind of see, okay, who are maybe some of the older women, maybe some of the older guys, maybe, you know, someone who, you know, has the power to speak up, maybe someone same level as you, but maybe has a bigger voice, or, you know, is able to kind of take initiatives. I think spotting those people when you join a new organization early on and figuring out who you could go to, which may not be HR or may not be the actual system in place that's supposed to deal with like whatever workplace problems. It may just be a colleague or a mentor or someone you can go to and have a conversation with. And I think that's really important to kind of pick your people as soon as you kind of join an industry, and figuring out who you can speak to. It may not even be people from the same company, but like, you know, building that awareness and being able to bounce that idea. It's like, this doesn't feel right. You know, sometimes toxicity, you know, in a workplace can feel very different than toxicity in a relationship, or, you know, so you can be like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm just young and I don't know things, and maybe this is how the world works. So when you have those doubts, being able to kind of go and talk to someone more experienced who's able to say, yeah, that was inappropriate or that was wrong, would be really, I think, really helpful to kind of build your network around you as you kind of step into this world. The other thing I would say is around mentorship. I'm a bit tired of the whole mentorship, you know, concept altogether. You know, and I think there's been multiple conversations and multiple discussions and a lot of studies, and, you know, I think fundamentally it just doesn't work as a concept. You know, if it's just mentorship, it doesn't really do much. You know, I mean, sure, a lot of people can mentor me, or I can mentor a lot of people. I'm not sure how helpful I am. And that was a realization that I had actually a few years back. You know, a lot of younger women in the industry would kind of reach out and be like, would you like to be my mentor? And I'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll make time. And, you know, but then I realized actually it can be probably helpful to maybe 10% of all of you, in a way that I would define as maybe away from mentorship as sponsorship. It's like, okay, I will only mentor now the young women where I feel, not necessarily young, you know, women in the industry, where I feel I can actually be more useful than just give advice. Okay, maybe I do know your industry, or I do know people in your industry, or I can recommend you, or I can speak to someone so you can get an interview, or, you know, so it's a bit more than I just give advice. And if you think about it, it's something men have been doing for hundreds of years. You know, it's, you know, we mentor each other. Men just make a phone call and say, you know, talk to this guy I know from uni. So I think we just need to, you know, just grow out of that mentorship concept and kind of, you know, throw the ladder down for the next women coming in the industry, and actually help them out the ladder as opposed to just give them advice.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabina. Anna, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that has been already covered. Like, when you're young, you don't know what a healthy workplace looks like. You think that, is it me? And it's really easy to feel like you don't fit in, you don't belong. That's why also some women might drop really early in their career, because they were the only one, you know, in their computer science class, or they were the only one pretty much everywhere around their journey when they started. There are not so many role models. They are there, but you need kind of to find them. They're not so prominently kind of featured on top conferences or leading media you know, outlets or business magazines or anything out there, technology magazines, so to say. So I think it's really easy to question that. That's why, and I think that very often there is like this narrative that women should feel grateful for what they get. When you're like really fresh grad, you want to secure that role, especially if you're an immigrant. If you're an immigrant, you're already disadvantaged because you feel like you need to work twice hard. If you're like a woman of color, if you're a minority, it's much harder. So you feel like you need to be grateful. And once you're there, you don't want things to go completely wrong, right? And I like the suggestion that Sabina had. She said you need to ask someone for feedback, like, is it okay, right? Because you don't know. And it's, if you feel that something is wrong, it might be not just a feeling, it might be the reality. So I think that knowing and asking questions, it's something that Zoja covered, like how many women are in the management or executive role. When was the last time a woman was promoted into leadership, right? So you want to know how often women are promoted. You want to think also how you potentially can get promoted. So see the reactions also during the interviews. You will see a lot because they might not come up with an answer right away. So there could be some awkward silence or whatever. And I think that could be also a red flag. And to your point, you mentioned when women and men start, they are equally, let's say, excited and they don't see any barriers until they don't get promoted from individual contributor to a manager. There is this phenomenon called the broken rank. So it refers to the first step on the corporate ladder from individual contributor to a manager that many women never get to take. So according to studies, for example, McKinsey Women in the Workplace report, for every 100 men promoted to a manager, only 86 women are promoted. And that number drops even further for women of color. And what is interesting that the broken rank phenomenon often persists through the manager and director levels and shows that too often women are never able to catch up. And then to the point of Zoya, if women decide to start a family, that they might, when they're coming back from the maternity, they will get, motherhood penalty, while dads get fatherhood bonus. And then there are very often when there is, for example, there are tons of assumptions, for example, what after that return women can or cannot do, like who's watching your kids, but we would invite you, but who will be watching your kids? Or dad will be watching, my kids. It's our kids. Like I'm not the only one, right? So this still can get really, I think things are changing, I want to believe, but then there is still a lot of things that are pretty outdated and they unfortunately still exist. So as really early in your career, you want to be watching for these red flags. And for example, if you're in a company and you get comments in meetings or I don't know, sometimes even if it's a client, like you are very technical for a woman or something really inappropriate, some kind of jokes that make you feel really like uncomfortable. So don't excuse that. I mean, it's not just culture, right? It's a warning sign. So that's something that you definitely shouldn't be, like if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. And I think when you don't know the culture yet, and it's just like that's how we do things here, right? So that might be a toxic culture, that might be not a fit for you.
In other words, what I'm also hearing is do not question that feeling, right? That you get that something's off, right? Ask, and whether ask the people interviewing or like entering, or find a group of people or someone to kind of have the conversation with and have a checkup, right? A reality check of a kind.
I think it's someone senior in a company, a woman ideally, a colleague. You can check in with several people, and also outside of your company, you probably know pretty much a lot of people. And then networking is also key. You want to be going to events to expanding your network. And then once you've formed some relationships, so to say, you can also run things by them. So, you need to be thinking how you can, in a way, also take care of yourself to protect. So if it costs your mental health, so you don't feel well, or your, for example, comments or ideas are dismissed, you're spoken over in meetings, or someone makes an inappropriate comment or joke that doesn't make you feel okay. So that's something that needs to be called out, definitely.
Yeah, and just one thing I would add, like sometimes you can also call it out in a nice way, because sometimes people, for example, what often happens is like if you have a small company, it's very likely that they are like a team of 9 and that's a team of 9 men. And then the 10th employee is a woman. It's very likely that they will have a different culture than, like a big company. But sometimes if you speak up or try to say something that it doesn't make you feel comfortable, the reaction will also tell you a lot. Are they like, oh my God, sorry? Or are they like, come on, you're taking things too seriously? La, la, la. So those are the things. And I would just add, if we are talking about young women entering tech, there is also one data point that I really like. People are often talking how women are more loyal, like they stay longer in a company. which is great for the company, but it's not that great for women. And often that there's a part of the reason for the pay gap as well, because women are the highest pay increase you get when you change a company. That's like most often the case. But what we've seen from the data, that if a woman changes her first job in the first 3 years, then she changes other jobs at the same tempo as men. So what do women tend to do? They get stuck in their first job for like 7 years, 8, and then they have kids, and then they don't want to change it because they are for so long, and then it gets even harder and harder. But the moment you break it and you say, especially if you feel like the culture is not right, and you say, okay, I'm now changing the job, you see that's nothing special. It's okay to change roles and to change jobs, then it becomes like a normal thing and part of your career advancement plan. So that's one advice I would give as well. Change your first job.
This delightfully, like, kind of, you just made a segue into the next topic, which is kind of related to confidence, self-confidence, because I think problem of changing anything in general in life, and let's talking about jobs, is usually lack of confidence. Is like, what, this is good. Let's stick with what's good, and not like better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Maybe not an adequate parallel, but still kind of resonates. So when we asked our participants what would they highlight as number one reason for women to decide to not work in tech industry, above 60% in every age group marked like male dominance. That was the first one. And then the second reason was they abandoned the tech career because of lack of confidence. So Anna, we can start with you. How can we today, as a society, empower women to more often pursue careers in tech, the careers that they want in tech?
Empowerment should go beyond just encouragement. It's also about access, visibility, and of course, eliminating the systemic barriers that kept women from participating fully for way too long, honestly. So one thing that we can do, probably companies could do is and the society in general, is to normalize non-linear path. So because too often it looks like, and for women, it's often the narrative is that there is only one way to succeed in tech, and some kind of a linear, uninterrupted, way to climb the ladders. In reality, there are so many pivots out there. You can take a career break, you can make a transition, you can change your first job earlier than stay in 7 or 8 years, like Zoya mentioned. You can take, so many risks. And we must, I think, in a way, celebrate this reinvention, this career changes, reskilling, step in the way, strategic choices, and not seeing them as a setback. And I think the more we normalize as a society diverse journeys, the more women will feel confident to forge their own paths. I think like Gen Zs are doing it really well. I think that they're really embracing more flexibility. They care about the workplace generally that they would decide to work for. Like they want to know that this is a company that has strong values, that supports women people from different backgrounds, that allows you a freedom of expression. These things are very important, and I think that companies probably didn't fully embrace it yet, and I think that there would be some kind of a pushback too. Number two is also to show women that representation matters, that they belong, and I think that one of the best way to demonstrate is also to have women put in the spotlight and represented in your company in leadership. So if you don't have women in the leadership level, it's very easy not to see the path, to leadership, because you don't have any female leaders. So we need to bring women generally from behind the scenes to spotlight. For example, some of the things that we do at WomenTech Network, we have our global awards where we recognize women from all over the world who are doing incredible things in technology. So, leadership categories. We also have product management, cybersecurity leadership. So women would see, hey, she's doing these incredible things, and young women would look at her and think, well, if she did it, I also can do it. And there's so many different stories, people coming from different disadvantaged backgrounds and rising to the top and making an impact. So we need to ensure that literally every meeting, every conversation, that the voices of women are heard, seen, celebrated, that they're included and encouraged. And it's not just about shifting the culture, it's also our making room at the table for women. Sometimes it's also about redesigning the table entirely. So you need to see what might need to change totally. So we move from pure word we support women to actually promoting women into leadership roles, giving them access and visibility, giving them resources, giving them all the tools that they might need to make a change in the company.
Can I jump in quickly?
Please.
Yeah, I absolutely loved Anna's point around non-linear career paths, but also because I felt a bit seen. I am currently a tech lobbyist, but my path has nothing to do with any of this. Like, I studied Latin and ancient Greek in university. I did war studies for my master's. I've always studied what I was, passionate or interested in at any given time. So I never really thought of my education as a path to a career. I thought of my education as I'm really interested in this. I'd like to spend 3 years learning more about it. And then I ended up, working in politics and then in tech and now in kind of tech policy. And I fully agree with that. I think the kind of embracing the non-linear career paths and kind of, even when I'm hiring now or I'm in the position to interview people, I'm always looking for the odd CVs out. Like, who are the people who haven't done the exact same path as everyone else? I always think those people deserve an interview. We'll see who ends up getting the job, but I'm always interested to see the people who've done something else and end up in this career or want to come in this career, want to come in tech policy. What motivates you? Why? How did you kind of come this way? And I think that's fascinating. I think that's what makes workplace really interesting. If we've all been to the same school studying the same thing, which is not going to be a very interesting team, are we? It's just going to be a bit boring. So, I love that. I love that point. I wanted to kind of add a bit of flavor to it. On the role models as well, fully agree. You can't be what you can't see, right? It's you need those role models. You need to kind of see women in positions of power to be able to even think about, maybe doing that one day. One of the things in my kind of industry is, we speak in a lot of conferences, we're in a lot of panels, we kind of have to kind of make our voices heard and get messages across, and that's the nature of the work. And the amount of manuals in this industry, especially in tech policy, is just staggering. Still, you just have this enormous selection of people to choose from to speak on a panel, and somehow you end up with 5 men. They're not only 5 men, but they look like they have the same mother. So it's kind of, the lack of diversity is just insane sometimes. And one of the things we started doing, and I think it worked really well, is to kind of go to, when a company, because you invite the company, right? You invite someone from the company to come and speak, or from that department in a government, or from that institution to come and speak on a panel. They tend to put forward someone called James. I go back to James and I'm like, thank you, James. Maybe you can think of a colleague of yours that's maybe not called James and maybe not white and the most straightforward panelist you can think of. Someone in your team who you'd like to maybe promote or, give them an opportunity to grow. All the time, the answer has been, oh, yeah, absolutely. Here is whoever that we've never thought about before. So it's also kind of pushing a bit against the first option or the first solution or the easiest way out of something that can kind of maybe create more of that diversity. And maybe one last point around calling people out that came out in the previous conversation. So there is something about calling people out, and I think with some people there is no other way. especially the ones who kind of repeatedly and pretend they don't know, or pretend they've never been told before, but like who repeatedly kind of, make comments that are inappropriate, or, I think that deserves all the calling out in the world and as loudly as possible. But there is something else that, I like to call calling in, which is when people make genuine mistakes. Like they literally have no idea that whatever they just said was either inappropriate or wrong or made someone feel really uncomfortable. And I found that in, 15 years of calling a lot of people in, whether they liked it or not, to be a lot more effective. It's when you have that private conversation with someone and you say, look, what you just said in the meeting earlier wasn't great. It made me feel this way. Or, you created this atmosphere with some colleagues that weren't feeling fantastic after you just, the way you framed that wasn't. There's a lot more self-reflection going on in that context than in the context in which you publicly called me out and then I automatically become defensive. So there is something there around kind of working different methods and ways to try to achieve the aim.
I love that, Sabina, and I was just like, it reminds me of the fact that most of us think of confrontation as a negative thing, and it doesn't have to be, because that's like when we talk about confrontation, you immediately think about calling out, but confronting may be just like calling in what you're calling. It's just that giving the benefit of the doubt that the other side is not necessarily a bigot or like a closed-minded whoever. It's just that they might not know. So give them that, and then if nothing else works, there are other methods. So yes, thank you.
I love all the points. I agree again with almost everything said. I would just add one to go back to the question of self-confidence, which you asked, which I think is really important. And I have two takes on this. First one, and they're mixed, they're the same basically, but one is, as Sabina said, let's stop doing mentorship. My thing in that sense is let's stop educating women about anything. Like, I think that women know a lot of things. They don't need additional course or additional lecture or some, I think we have it. Now we need to push women to go and do stuff. And I think the way you get confident is by doing stuff, not like learning and prepping yourself to be 100% ready. I think we need, and this is the point for both anyone who wants to support women in terms of events, networks, employers, and for women itself. You don't need that additional course. You don't need that additional book to read. You're ready. And on the other side, there's something that I also think is very important, especially for women who are in entrepreneurial roles, in C-level roles. You are never really ready, and you are never 100% right. Actually, the more you climb the ladder, more of your decisions are wrong. I heard one woman who was one of the first CTOs of a large telco company in Europe. And she said she was the first one of that. I think she was the first CTO, women CTO in telco in Europe. And she said, and I love it, when you are at the C-level, half of the decisions you make every day are wrong. But you need to be okay because the other half are right. And you just hope that half that you got right is the important half. And I think when I go back and I talked to her about it, and she said that she feels like a lot of women are not comfortable with the number of mistakes you are going to be making in your decisions. For some decisions, you won't be having time to analyze all the data. You won't be having all the data. You won't be having all the information. It's like you need to break and stop thinking about the issue. And I think this is something that goes back to us being the better student. I think this is like life getting back to us because, women are better at schools, have more of them are graduating from college. More of us are having master's degrees. More of us are having PhD degrees. We have better grades at schools. And this is not preparing us for real life, because we won't be having all A's at the C level and managerial level. So I think this is something that we need to be talking about more. And the way I think it's going to be done is by letting women do things, make mistakes, get comfortable with mistakes, and then just get them do more important things and higher roles and higher positions.
Thank you, Zoja. All right. Again, huge topic. I would love to jump in and talk about. I'm not a person in tech, but definitely interested in the topic because it's not just a tech thing, right? It's a very.
You represent a very tech company, so you
exactly.
are in tech. And as Sabina said very clearly in the beginning, it's not about tech.
It's not. Yeah.
People who are experts in tech. It's about all the roles that we can have to improve the society and to make tech companies do a better job and every other company do a better job.
Exactly. But I was like, I think we need to just like move forward. I bet that we can all talk about this for a long time, and there are a lot of questions and just like sub branches. So we talk about like beginnings and kind of staying in tech, etc. But it's like now going back to what we mentioned earlier in the conversation too. It's like getting to that when you've been in business for a longer time, like how your perspective changes. And these are like the statistics that speak about the work-life balance, where I think it's, let's see, around 80% of participants in the survey who were like women aged between 25 and 34, they were satisfied with the work-life balance. But this changes as women get older. Or at least according to the participants of the survey, where like women from like age 45 and above are less happy about the work-life balance. And with like even 28% of the participants claiming they're somewhat or very unsatisfied. So it's not even just, it could be better. Sabina, we can start with you. Why do you think that balance is becoming worse as we get older? And so what could be the reasons, and how could we improve this balance? How can we balance it out, that is?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And I think, it kind of goes back to a point Zoja made earlier around, what happens, right? Because if you look at the age groups that you're talking about, what happens? They have babies. That's what happens. And they not only have babies, but they have aging parents. So it's double the trouble of caring responsibilities that happen in the same time as work. So obviously when you're 25, there's work and friends. When you're 35 or 40, it may be, work, maybe less friends, a lot of babies or children with their own problems and aging parents with their own problems. So yeah, I don't think work-life balance naturally gets significantly worse, whether the work environment is fabulous or not. That said, we do know that actually, women returning to work after maternity leave or any form of other caring leave, they tend to go to a lower role. If that happens, they tend to go to a lower role. That means maybe 1/3 of your earnings is gone. I think there's a PwC study that's very good on this, kind of showing just how, they take a step back. They think, okay, the only way to manage this whole thing of like having a full-time job and looking after five people that all have different needs is to maybe take a smaller role than I used to have maybe before I had all these other responsibilities. And I think that's, that is a problem, because you're losing, a lot of women don't even return at all, or they return for a bit of time and then they decide I can't do all of it. And then they end up, doing the caring responsibilities as a full-time job and maybe something on the side related to their former job or not. So that loss of the tech force is and the women in the tech workforce is really a huge problem. And again, bringing this women back to work, bringing this women back to tech roles and senior tech roles is good for business. So we need to find a way to kind of address some of that. And one point I want to, there's 1,000,001 reasons why all of this is happening. But one point I want to make, which is very much related to the post-COVID pandemic situation and hybrid work and everything, is something called proximity bias, which I love, because it's like, it basically shows that we unconsciously think someone is better, smarter, deserves more time, promotion, anything, just because they show up in the office more. We automatically think that. So, which is insane. If you think about it, like the performance of a human being has nothing to do with who they are, especially in tech roles. If they have to stay with headphones on and, code on a computer, it really doesn't matter where they are. But we have that. And that's a real problem because women kind of, a lot of them report feeling excluded from important meetings because, they're more at home, they're in the office. And although you can do everything hybrid these days, we feel like, oh, there are some meetings where I haven't been invited because I wasn't in the office. Where, you kind of have this dynamic or, the promotion is not happening because, well, I haven't really seen your face in the office for the last 3 weeks. Or when these big decisions are made, regardless of your actual performance. And I think that's enormously important because it's also super difficult to tackle if it's an unconscious bias. So, if it's, you can start with things like unconscious bias training, which we have done for quite some time over, diversity concerns and other things. So that's a place to start, but you need to kind of make sure that throughout your kind of recruitment process, throughout your kind of employment contract, throughout your kind of support systems in the company, that, people are just as comfortable working from home as they're from the office, especially in the tech sector. Like there is no reason why a whole army of people, and that's what the pandemic showed, why a whole army of people will commute for like hours every day to get into an office to do the exact same thing they were doing in the living room. Sure, there are reasons why you need teamwork, when you need people to come together, and you will have days when that needs to happen, and that's absolutely fine. That's why we have hybrid workplaces. But we really need to tackle that because that has been a fantastic time for women in the workplace. The time since the pandemic and this hybrid working space and women being able to kind of account for all these other elements of their lives in the same time has been a fantastic time for women in the workplace. And we shouldn't lose that because we are going to lose the women in the, if they have to choose in between family and the work because I can't do them both, they'll choose family and we'll lose them. And that's probably not acceptable in this day and age if we figured out how to do hybrid working.
I'd like to add on that, on the sandwich generation, so they're called women in the 45 plus age group, so to say. So during this time, it's like, if you have kids and you have aging parents, but there is one more thing, one layer that you might be also navigating personal health challenges, And then what happens is you have this overlapping responsibilities, taking care of your kids, taking care of your aging parents, work. And this creates this, emotional and logistical strains, especially when support systems are limited, because maybe it was parents who were a support system, but now you need to take care of them. So where is your support system? And that's what makes it also much more complex. I'm also not a fan of work-life balance. I think it's a myth. I think it creates an illusion that you can split. Can have a perfect split, between work and life. I think it's pretty outdated. I think that if more companies also, like Sabina mentioned, embraced, given people a choice, like being in the office only when they need to, when they have a meeting, not when they just forced to go every day because they will be magically much more productive out there. How does that allow them to have more flexibility? How does that allow them to be more productive? I have never seen a person who's been every single day working 8 hours straight, super productive. It's not even me myself, There are some days I can work 14 hours and there are some days I, feel terrible and I cannot work at all, or I can work just a couple of hours. And that will be my kind of concept of work-life integration, that you, without trying to have this, I think it's also exhausting to have, to have an idea or this illusion that you might have a perfect split between two areas. I think you will never. I think sometimes companies also expect you to work like you don't have children or, don't have any other responsibilities outside of your work. So you need, it's exhausting because sometimes even women were sharing with me who have younger kids that they needed like to pretend that they are sick. So they, cannot say that the kid is again sick and that they need to, to work from home again, because there are lots of policies that push, back to the office. And there are also a couple of reasons, why it's challenges, because also of ageism. It's this kind of a silent force in the tech industry. It's like literally when you look at the women's career in technology and in corporate, perhaps in other fields too, it's like there's always this extra layer. Once you made it, you think you figure it out, and there is something new coming up. And then think about tech field. It's like new technologies, things are changing. This is how we work now. We have AI, so we need to implement it everywhere. So stuff like that, leading different teams also across time zones, whatever that would be for you. So women 45 plus often find themselves needing to demonstrate that they're still like agile, innovative, relevant, despite their proven track record. There's always this pressure to work harder, to do more. And there are lots of, when you're a senior leader, there are lots of, there's lots of pressure, of course. People are looking up to you. You're now a role model. You're somebody's, manager. You're leading teams. You're very visible. And there are lots of travel, tons of travel across time zone to different parts of the world. Like recently organized this Chief in Tech dinner. And I was speaking to a couple of leaders, and literally so many of them mentioned, the senior leaders, and they mentioned, I literally live out of the suitcase. Like I've been to Atlanta, now I'm back to London, and then next week I'm traveling to, to Japan or whatever that would be, the country. So it's like so exhausting. You're across time zones. It's like easily to get sick on a flight, especially if you have long flights. So there are lots of different challenges out there. And I think we want to believe that things will become easier when, for example, our children are big or stuff like that. But it's this constant balancing act. And I think there is a point that Zoya mentioned about being comfortable making mistakes and letting go of perfectionism. I think the moment you let go and say, okay, I'm not going to be a perfect, a CEO, perfect manager, perfect mom, and that's okay. That society wants me to be perfect. I understand that I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm a real person, so I can feel bad. I can, make bigger mistakes on one days and I win on some other days. And I forgive myself ultimately, that I make them, and I say this is okay. And I don't let anyone to say to me otherwise. Like whatever someone says something to you, don't let it really get to your heart, I would say. Some feedback and some, I would say, comments or whatever things that would be going our ways, we need to put this really like, so to say, filter and say, hey, okay, this is just, I don't care about this, because you need to protect your energy, you need to protect your well-being, you need to protect the core things that you're doing and not let anyone to kind of take the focus from you.
Thank you, Anna.
If you're waiting for me to add, I have nothing. I agree.
That was my question. I saw you just like nodding to everything. I was like, okay. Oh,
I would ruin.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, as they would say. Because we need to wrap it up, I just wanted to give you an opportunity before we close it off to say if there's anything else that you want to add about this topic, something that we didn't, like, briefly, I mean, as briefly as one can on a topic like this.
I just want to go back to this discussion of fixing the entry. And I think it's really the key question, because right now, the reason why I said I have this hobby project of mine is because for years and years and years, now more than a decade, I've been sitting at these panels, and I know it won't fix over 10 years, or it takes several generations for sure. But I think that if we don't work hard on getting more girls to get interested into these really tech roles, we will always end up talking about how to get more women in tech. And we are always like, Everyone is supporting DEI until the crisis comes, and then everyone forgets about it and focuses on making profit and unfortunately, and like these like very short-term money generating roles. And then what happens is, if you are a company that in the best case has 30% of women and 70% of men, you steer away into focusing on your majority of your workforce, and you forget about this minor part. And unless we try, and in time try quicker to get more women to start entering, and as I say, it's not just tech roles, it's tech jobs. So it can be a designer, but that you're comfortable to be a designer in a tech company rather than in a winery, or anything of that sort, that you are okay of being an HR or a marketing person, but in tech, not in some other areas. And this is the reason, and there is numerous research, and they always say it's one of the rare areas where we see that academic research has moved, when it comes to tech, has moved faster than tech sector in a way. And that's that academics have, in various like really, really deep studies, have shown that the girls are dropping out and losing interest in anything related to technologies starting the age of 6. I think it's way too early. I have a kid who is now going to be 4, and it's already scary when you start seeing how they differentiate themselves. And one of those like things, for example, that's very interesting to me is, even if you send a kid to these programming classes, like private programming schools, so they can play, majority of those students are boys. So even parents make that distinction. And then even if you send a girl there, she doesn't like the fact that she's one of the rare girls. And then she starts playing with assembling cars. And instead of boosting her and boosting her interest, you actually confirm the stereotype. And this is something that we really need to pay attention to. So if I was like, if there are some new parents, I would rather, if you have a girl, don't get her into anything related to tech unless you're very sure that it won't steer her away from tech, because that's exactly what's happening in those programming schools. And they are often complaining her girls are not continuing with JR education because their resources, the way they teach the groups, are just not adjusted to what let's say, I'm talking now boys and girls as a majority, but there is this difference of majority of girls, what they are interested in, and boys. And I think in the ideal world, in 100 years from now, that shouldn't be important, but right now it is. So I think we should all take care of that as well.
So in other words, start early.
Exactly.
We got to, well, all I'm hearing from, I mean, not all, but it kind of boils down to fighting a battle on different fronts, right? Where you have to be supporting the girls, starting early, then supporting throughout, working on perfectionism, the need to, to be perfect in everything moving forward. Mistakes are okay, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a lifelong journey, and whew.
Maybe just one point to add, as a thought that I just had as kind of we're going through the conversation, kind of all the barriers and the various things that we still need to kind of tackle and work on. It's very much kind of the acknowledgement that it's a tough time. You know, if you are an advocate for gender equality, for diversity, for equality, for inclusion, for, you know, getting more young women in tech, for, you know, any form of fight in this space that, you know, I think it's fair to say for all of us on this call, it's probably been a theme of a lifetime. It's a hard time. And, you know, acknowledging that, I think has been really important. As I was thinking this year, you know, about the International Women's Day and like, what's my message? And my message was always a call to action. Let's go and let's do, and what are we going to do this next 12 months to kind of push forward the agenda. This year, I found it really hard. Like, I found it really hard to find my message, or to, you know, it just felt like I was exhausted, like everyone around me was exhausted, like the political messaging was disheartening. It was really hard. And one message, you know, I would like to maybe leave your audience with is, find your grounding in the communities that give you give you that warmth and purpose and empowerment at this time. I think it's even more important. So these clubs, all the meeting clubs that Anna is running and putting together, the networks, the communities that feel like home and feel warm and feel safe in this particularly complicated time, and that will give you the energy even after this little break of maybe feeling a bit down or a bit disheartened or a bit exhausted. That will give you the energy to kind of get back up and keep pushing for this agenda that's so important. So yeah, I just thought of that as we're going through the conversation.
Thank you. Much needed, something the kind of really like important message to not forget, because it's easy to kind of overlook and just internalize.
It reminds me of the early COVID times, when we had all in-person events canceled because definitely of COVID. And then we, kind of pivoted into this. We talked about career pivots, but here is also a kind of pivoting in the direction of the virtual global conference. Suddenly, everyone was feeling a sense of community, a sense of purpose to unite. We set this ambitious mission, to unite 100,000 women in technology, which felt like crazy, around that time. And, it gives you purpose. Feel like understanding that you are not alone in your struggle, that you are not alone feeling what you're feeling right now, feeling sad, feeling frustrated, feeling disencouraged, that you can, still find a community where you feel supported, where still find a community where you can see role models, so women who are in the C-suite, who are leading teams, who are making an impact. And I think it gives you hope to get through the tough times. This year there will be in May 2022 will be our 6th edition of the Women in Tech Global Conference. And we're excited like never. Every year we're excited. And my hope every year, and from the feedback that we receive, women saying, hey, I've never seen women and so many women speakers on the one roof, or like I connected, from since the very first edition, I still, have the strong relationships with the women that I connected at that time, or this is going to my 5th edition already. And I'm so excited because ultimately what holds us together during tough times, it's easy when the things are going right and things are being celebrated and everyone is supporting women in tech and DEI, it's like you feel the sense. And of course, that's how it should be. But when the things are tough, you need to look for a community where you still feel like, it's not lost on us. Like there is hope, there is a way forward, that tough times are not going to be forever. And there is hopefully something we can do during this time still. So it gives me hope. It gives me motivation also to do what, we're passionate about, supporting women in technology. And one thought that I would want to leave to finish out today's conversation, it will be a call to action for companies. Lots of companies are struggling, saying, hey, we don't have enough women applying. And then, once they hire them, they still don't fix the way company works to accommodate different things that they might need and the things that they haven't thought about. When Zoya mentioned an example, you're in a team of 10 and you are the only woman, definitely there will be different things that they never thought about. It is the first time they have a woman on such a small team. And so make sure that you create all their provide all the resources and support women once you attracted them, to work in your company. So retention. And then promote women. It's very often like promotion happens during this, in a way, this very mysterious way, So define clear and measurable promotion criteria, and provide regular feedback and growth plans. Because when career paths are visible, bias becomes really harder to hide. Everyone has an equal plan. So it's not just promoted because you have leadership potential. Everyone, gets to that chance. And then when you have a clear defined criteria, it becomes much harder to say that this was promoted because of whatever. And then sponsor women into leadership roles. Whenever you have visibility into somebody's work and you have a seat at the table. So please make sure to to use that voice to promote other women. I think I'm a believer that there, we can, even if that hasn't been done before, we can build more seats. There are much more seats. I mean, sometimes it feels like there is a scarcity of seats on the top. I think you can make tons of different changes to make the table bigger, but you need to get there. So for example, when I was interviewing leaders, and some of them shared that when they experienced bias very early in their career, they got super motivated to get to the top, so they actually can start changing policies. So I think that's what drives women, to get there, to make an impact, to make different decisions, to promote women who have been promoted years back, to change things in a way that can function as a system that can give everyone a chance, to make an impact.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you all three. I cannot thank you enough for this conversation and an important discussion. And I guess this probably opened a whole lot of questions for our viewers, hopefully. Before we, I think we already went over time, but it's still, it was worth it. Before we wrap up, can you please tell us where can people find you and learn more about your organizations?
I think it's easier to find me on LinkedIn. And if you can link it later, there's a link to everything I do.
Same. I'm all over social media, and I have decided a long time ago that privacy is not a thing on the internet. So all my profiles are public, and I make friends with everyone. So, find me everywhere.
That moment, that beautiful moment. So LinkedIn works well. I think it's my go-to platform. We can also find more information at WomenTech.net. We also have our upcoming global conference. You're welcome to join. Yeah, contact me on LinkedIn.
All right. Well, thank you, Zoja, Sabina, and Anna, for taking the time to talk to each other and to me and our audience today. And I wish you a wonderful rest of the day and good work.
Thank you, Malin.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you all.